Welcome to the Concern Podcast, where we unpack political, socio-economic, and cultural stories shaping our world. I'm Emmanuel Taban, and today I'm honored to be joined by someone who has made an incredible journey, a guy born in the eastern parts of Sierra Leone, in the district of Kano. And later on, in 1991, when the civil war in Sierra Leone emerged, he had to be forced and live in a refugee camp. But later on, still determined, he came back to Sierra Leone, completed his high school and college, and later on he decided that he would now explore some part of the world. He moved to North America, settled in the United States, one of the best countries in the world. But still, he feels that he has not accomplished his life. He would therefore look for some opportunities and move to Canada. And here he is today with me, living the Canadian dream. He is, by the way, not just a Sierra Leonean, but he's speaking to me also as a proud Canadian. I'm honored to have you on this podcast, Mr. Kembe. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. It is a pleasure to be on your podcast. Thank you.
Cool. How is it gone so far?
Yukon is great. It's a beautiful city,
right.
Very quiet, right. Very welcoming. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you the culture in Yukon, more family-oriented.
Right.
It is much more similar to the place I'm coming from in Africa.
Exactly.
So it's beautiful.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yes.
Yeah, I read about your book, by the way,
okay.
And the first time I got your book is when actually you came to the university for the launching, and I planned to attend that event, but unfortunately I couldn't for some reason, so I came later when the event was done. But because I work at the library, I think you gave some 2 copies to the library.
Yes.
Then one of my colleagues who works at the library, she decided to give me that book. And the funny thing is that when she gave me the book, I just came inside and I read it in a day. Just in less than 5 hours, I completed the whole book.
That's amazing. Yeah,
very exciting.
Easy, very small book you can read, let's say in 6 hours or even in a day. Yes.
Right. I read it, I think, in about 5 hours. And it has really a very, very inspiring story in it.
Thank you.
Very inspiring.
Thank you.
And maybe just to start with, maybe, I know you have a very, very inspiring story in that book. And when did you start that you want to have your story written down?
You know, thank you for your question. And like I said, thank you for having me, Emmanuel.
Right.
You know, I started thinking seriously to write my book when I've realized how far I have come.
Right.
From civil war, from being displaced, being a refugee, and where currently I am.
Right.
But the thing actually sank in when I went to University of Lethbridge. There was a day, our professor, her name is Ellen, she asked us to do a project on any topic.
Right.
It was very open on any topic.
Right.
At that time, it was in 2016, I wanted to write on the recession in the US, 2008 recession.
Exactly.
But I told myself this would be a very good opportunity for me to tell my story a little bit. I think it was about 2,000 words, and I decided to write about the Sierra Leone Civil War, just in 2,000 words. When I submitted the project, I could recall my professor, Ellen, called me in her office and said, "Komba, your story is compelling. I will encourage you to write a book."
Right.
And that was in 2016. That was the time I told myself, it is time for me to get my story out there so I can able to inspire people, I can able to motivate people about my journey. So that was actually the time I thought of that. And in 2019, this happened, she encouraged me in 2016, I did nothing. When I graduated in 2019, I did nothing. Fast forward, in 2023, when I moved to Whitehorse, I started writing my book.
Right.
And I was able to accomplish it in 2024, specifically in November.
Right.
So that was the story behind it.
Cool. Yeah. That's an exciting one. You know, and that really tells us sometimes how the people that maybe we're in the schools, like our instructors can actually shape our lives sometimes.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Just that encouragement actually motivated you, and it was that made you actually to start writing your book.
Yep.
Very interesting. And you know, when I read your book, I realized that you were born to a chief in your place. Like
yes.
Your dad was a chief in one of the districts there.
Yeah.
Was that called again the Bain clan?
Gandong.
Yeah.
Pane chiefdom.
Yeah.
Gandong Pane.
So your dad was a chief, and then probably, you know, like, and you also mentioned about, you know, being born in a family of a chief. Probably you have some privileges that you enjoy with, and you also said your dad had actually accumulated some kind of wealth, like he had invested his wealth in property across some of the cities in Sierra Leone.
In Sierra Leone, yeah.
And I was just wondering, like, coming from like a well-to-do family, maybe by that time, and you just get displaced and had to go and live in the refugee camp for some time. How did you feel during that transition from being in a family where you have almost everything, and then you were forced to go and live in the refugee camp? What does that tell you about life?
About life, you absolutely. You know, it's a very great question. It was the most humbling and transformative experience. From being a chief's son, from privileges, from having food 3 times a day, from certainty, to living in a displaced and refugee camp wherein nothing was guaranteed.
Right.
There was no food. Even we have to struggle, no privacy. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was a very humbling moment for me. You know, life taught me during that moment that life is not about what we have. Life is about who we are when we lose everything.
Right.
It's not about all of the wealth, because all of the wealth, all of the riches, just in a split of second, we can lose everything.
Right.
But the only thing that can sustain us as human beings is our character.
Right.
It's our resilience.
Right.
It's our courage that will sustain us in the midst of most difficult times. Mm-hmm. So I learned a lot during those times. And since that time till now, humility has been part of my life. Mm-hmm. Because I saw wealth, like you just said, I saw wealth when I was born. My dad was rich. Right. But at the same time, just in split seconds, I saw all of those wealth disappear. Mm-hmm. And now I have to struggle. Right. I have to struggle for my food. I have to struggle where I sleep. There was no privacy. So it was the most humbling and transformative experience. Right. Yes.
I think your story really resonates with so many people.
Yeah.
And I lived in the refugee camp as well.
Okay. Wow. Where?
I lived in Uganda.
In Uganda.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
okay.
And you know, life in the refugee camp, it's not something that is easy, man.
It is not.
It's really not easy.
It is not.
That is where, like, if you're not strong, I think you'll just give up in life. You'll really, really give up in life. Yeah. And also, when you decided that you want to explore now some part of the world, you moved to the United States, and you stayed in the United States for some time with your cousins. You stayed in California, and then in 2012, you decided that you want to move to Canada.
Canada, yeah.
So you moved to Canada, and one of the interesting things is that, you know, when I was reading about your story, I feel like if I'm given a chance, maybe to just like to give a title to your book, maybe I'll give a very funny title, like maybe The Man who never gets satisfied. Because look, you wanted to get to maybe this part of the world, and you landed in the United States, one of the world's greatest countries on earth. Like, that is one of the greatest countries. You were in the United States, you live there, but you feel like, no, might not be like the right place. You still want to go ahead
and explore.
came to Canada in 2012. And then while in Canada, you started working. You started your first job as working with construction company. And after working with a construction company, you feel like this is not the right thing for you, right? You went on, started working with a warehouse.
Yep.
And then after some months, you get promotion as well.
Yep.
And then you left that work after 1 year again. That is why I'm saying, I would say, a man will never get satisfied, you know. And after working with the warehouse, you came in and then you got a job with TD Bank.
With TD Bank,
which
yes.
is one of Canada's greatest financial institution.
Yeah.
And, you know, someone with, and that it didn't end there. With TD Bank, you getting some good money, I would say, but you decided that, no, I want to go to school, right? And then you decided just to take a leave of absence, and then you went to university.
You actually read my book.
I read your book very well. You went to university, like, you know, someone in your situation, for instance, like the newcomers or immigrants who came, they'll feel comfortable with what they already have. Like, you're already working with a financial institution, one of the greatest in Canada. And, you know, they wouldn't risk like leaving that job just to go to school and you're not getting money there. Maybe you have to work part-time. But what made you to get out of that comfort zone? Like,
you know, when you read my book, I talk about the 6 principles of resilience.
Yeah, that's in the last chapter.
The last chapter.
Right.
And one of the principles is what we call pivoting. Pivoting is when you decide to change course of action, either because of things are not working the way you want, or because of you want to create more impact.
Right.
So for me, when I got a job, you saw my journey in the book. I started in construction. I moved to a warehouse. Then I got a job at TD Bank. Right. And I will tell you, when I got a job at TD Bank, some of my friends at Edmonton, at that time I was in Edmonton, when I told them I want to go back to university, they asked me if I'm crazy.
Yeah.
I said, Komba, are you crazy? But no. I knew there was something inside me more that I can leverage on. So going to University Emmanuel, it wasn't just about job.
Right.
It was me creating a legacy for my children. You know, I got my first child in 2013. She's now 11 years old. She lives in Edmonton. For me, I wanted to just tell my kids or those going through similar situations like me that in life you should keep going until you are able to achieve what you really want. Don't get comfortable. People get into their comfort zone and sometimes they settle for less. But there's a potential, especially when you know yourself. The other thing I talk about in my book, one of the principles I talk about in my book is what I call the principle of faith. I talk about faith, I talk about pivoting, patience, positivity. The principle of faith is basically having faith in God, but also having faith in yourself, believing in yourself, believing in your potential, believing in your capabilities. So those things propelled me to say, having a job at TD Bank is not my final destination.
Right.
I have to go back to university so I can able also to learn the Canadian culture, to understand how things work in this society, and to get a better job, but at the same time, to be able to tell someone, especially immigrants, that comes and just settle for less, that you could actually do better.
Right.
That was a inspiration.
Right. That's really a very interesting perspective, and I just like how you structured your book.
Yeah.
And like in chapter 9, you gave like some cautionary guidelines, maybe for people who are
living,
who are attempting to move back home.
I call it making the move and managing expectations. That's the chapter.
That's chapter 9.
Making the move and managing expectations. Because when immigrants, when they leave Africa, like in my situation, when I was in Africa, I was working as a finance manager. And when I moved to Canada, the expectation was that when you come, everything would be like, just like that.
Right.
But no. So I wanted to encourage immigrants right now in Africa or in other parts of the world that when you're making them, and I wasn't just specific to Canada, I said North America.
North America, yeah.
Because I wanted people to know that when you move to Canada, when you move to America, the transition period could be prolonged.
Right.
And sometimes some people get mental health. Right. Sometimes some people literally give up because of they are thinking, what am I going to do with my life? But those are the moments wherein the power of resilience comes in.
Right.
To tell yourself that I'm not giving up.
Right.
No matter the circumstance. So chapter 9, I dedicate chapter 9 to immigrants so that they are well informed and prepared before they make the move. Some of us came, probably we didn't have enough information.
Right.
We just decided to come. Okay, now we come, we start struggling. But now, me being in this situation and I've seen what it means to live in Canada, the transition period, the culture, the society, the adaptability, it could take time. Right. I wanted to encourage other immigrants so they know exactly what to expect.
Right.
So that's what chapter 9 is about.
Yeah, I always tell people, people have a different way of looking at things. Like, they always feel like when someone is here, like you automatically become rich. Like they mainly like associate being here to like being wealthy maybe, and that I feel that is one greatest misconception that people have in their mind, because
it is.
Coming here alone, it doesn't mean like you're already rich.
No.
Right? Coming here gives you an opportunity, a platform of getting that.
Yes.
But you can be even one of the poorest person when you still live here.
Absolutely.
Worse than someone who lives back home.
Absolutely.
So if you don't take that opportunity, if you don't use it well.
Yeah.
And maybe I just want to ask you also, what do you think are some of the biggest blunders that people make right now, especially those who are moving from Africa here? What are those common mistakes that you feel they are doing right now?
I'll tell you, based on my experience, Emmanuel, I think is failing to do the assignment properly.
Right.
Failing to, back in the day when we were in Africa, the way, and I say this when I speak to my relatives and my friends, my brother works for EPA as a deputy director. Right. He has the opportunity to travel all over the world. So when I speak to people back in Africa, I always tell them, if you really want to move to North America, if you want to transition, do your homework well.
Right.
Do your research well. Try to call people that have lived here, ask them how is life.
Right.
Because that prepares you mentally when you're moving. So I think the blunder is that everything ties down is people really blunder because I think, one, they set very high expectations. You know why people get disappointed in life? The reason why people get disappointed in life is because of they set high expectations.
Right.
If those expectations are not met, the result is disappointment.
Right.
If you have low expectations of things, whether they work or they don't work, there's no disappointment.
Right.
There's no frustration. So one, they shouldn't set high expectations, and number two, they should actually research and do their homework very well.
Right.
That's what I would advise them.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a very great insight there. Very, very important one. And you moved from Sierra Leone to the United States and later on to Canada. And in your book, the title of your book, you've decided to you decided to give it a title, Resilience.
Yeah.
From Civil War to the Canadian Dream. What defines the Canadian Dream?
So that's a very great question. I think when I was writing this book, I think I got about 5-6 different titles in my head. I keep changing titles, and I would discuss with the lady that was editing the book for me. She lives in US.
Right.
And eventually, when I look at my journey from Civil War, from Sierra Leone, to where I am currently,
Right.
In a very humble way. I'm very humble. My journey in Canada has been very productive, very successful. So when you talk about the Canadian dream is wherein you are able to navigate the system and actually be able to get a very great and good job.
Right.
The Canadian dream is a dream wherein you are able to raise your children in a safe and good environment.
Right.
The Canadian dream is a situation wherein you are able to provide for yourself. You are able to have a sustainable and a very great job. So for me, and I will even extend the Canadian dream wherein people become homeowners. I've seen immigrants in this country, they establish businesses, they employ people. Those are the kind of things we are looking at when we talk about the immigrant community. It's not just about we want to survive.
Right.
It's about we want to give back to our community. In which way? Create employment, start small businesses. For me, the Canadian dream was when I decided to go to university. Actually, education was a bridge for me to be able to achieve this. Right now, in a very humble way, I can tell you I'm very humbled. I work for the government of Yukon as a manager, in a permanent position. So, coming from Africa, being refugee, being displaced, finding myself in this culture, navigating through all of the cultural differences, language barriers, and today I am working as a manager. That's a Canadian dream.
Right.
So when we talk about the Canadian dream, it's not just specific, it's very broad. And and I really encourage, as I speak to the listeners out there, I really encourage immigrants, especially immigrant communities, as we come to this place, we all have this Canadian dream. Because we all leave Africa and we are coming to North America for a better life.
Right.
We are coming to North America to give our kids a better life. We are coming to North America so we can able to establish businesses. We can become entrepreneurs and able to employ people. Those are the Canadian dream. So that is why when I title the book, some people might want to ask me, what this guy is talking about? From Civil War to the Canadian dream. Right. That's my Canadian dream.
Cool. And yeah, very interesting. That's really a very, very detailed definition.
Yeah.
And someone will argue with you that it's really hard right now to attain the Canadian dream.
It is, yes.
I had you talking about like owning like homes and doing a lot of establishing businesses and getting a better job and just like, of course, I've seen some of the things you've done. You came in, you attained your Canadian credential, like education credential, of which is very, very important.
Yeah.
And then later on you transitioned from working from TD Bank and then get your degree, and then now you're working with the government of Yukon, one of Canada's 13 sub-governments. Very interesting. And someone will argue that right now it's hard to get into the Canadian dream or to live in the Canadian dream. You think that statement is true? Or like maybe drafting it from your perspective, resilience. Maybe you would argue that if you're resilient, you always get it.
So that is the point I'm talking about.
Right.
When you look at life, 10 years from now, 10 years back, life was difficult.
Exactly.
50 years from now, life will be difficult.
Right.
At any point in time in life, there are people always complaining.
Right.
But this is what I tell people. Instead of you complaining, what is your opportunity that you see and grab and run with?
Right.
Things are difficult. We look at the economy globally. Even right now, even if you're in Africa, globally,
it's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
But why, even in the midst of this global crisis, people are still making progress? It's about the mindset.
Right.
So in my book, if you read the last chapter, I talk about one of the principles is about positivity, positive mindset, even in the most difficult situations. So I can assure immigrants, I can assure anybody that is going through difficult time, especially immigrants, that still the Canadian dream can be attained. Can be attained by doing the following. 1, believe in yourself.
Right.
Believe in your potential. Number 2, be patient. These I'm talking about now the 6 principles of my book.
Yeah.
Because sometimes patience is a virtue. Sometimes people want to get results easily
and quick.
Right. Sometimes it takes time.
Exactly.
And during those waiting time, if you're not careful, you can be easily distracted,
right,
or you can be easily frustrated. So it is a combination of patience. It's a combination of your mindset. It is a combination of you never giving up. Sometimes people, like when I was speaking at one of the events, people come here with masters from Africa,
right,
and they apply for jobs. They reject them.
Right.
But guess what? It is always important to have a place to start,
right,
and trust in the process. Believe in yourself. Be patient. Have a positive mindset. And when it is necessary to pivot, to change course of action, just know when it is necessary.
Right.
Like people move to Yukon. I ask people, why do you move to Yukon? If you are in Yukon and you realize things are not working for you,
yeah,
Canada is a very big country.
right,
Why not pivot? But before you pivot, make sure you do your homework well.
right, yeah,
So the Canadian dream, for me my life being a testimony. When I came to Canada, life was still difficult. People were still struggling. You always see people, I tell this to people all the time, people will always struggle. There is no way. People will always struggle.
right.
But those that believe in themselves, they are determined. And for me, like I said, I'm a huge believer. I trust in God. God has guided me, my journey. God has been with me. And when I move, I always commit my plans unto God.
Yeah.
So that's faith, trusting in God, but also faith, trusting in myself. And I will ask you a question. Why do you think, Emmanuel, when you came to Canada, you decided to come to university? That's your story of resilience you just started writing.
Right.
That's your story of resilience, because you told yourself, you know what? I will never give up on myself. I will never give up on my dream. Even though things are difficult. You know, going to university in this part of the world, people don't know, it is very stressful.
It is.
When I was at the university, I went through there are days I want to give up.
Right.
I come from class, I don't have money in my pocket, I have to go do school projects, I have to prepare for assignments.
Right.
And sometimes you go to your room and you're just like, what am I doing with my life?
Exactly.
But guess what? That's what we call the power of resilience.
Exactly.
So to listeners out there, the Canadian dream is still achievable.
It is achievable. Indeed,
Through the power of resilience.
Through the power of resilience.
Through trusting in yourself, believing in yourself,
right,
never giving up, and through patience and positive mindset, it is still achievable.